Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Book Trek 2022. This is an event that was created last year for BookTube by Vin at Revenant Reads, and last year we sprawled all over the map. We were half a year. This year it's a 2-month event, designed, as you might guess from the title, to celebrate Star Trek fiction. And the first half was August. The boiling hot month of August was the first half of Book Trek, which was the Wrath of Book Trek, where we looked back at the Roddenberry-era core of shows, the old TV Star Trek. There was a decade gap between that and the new Trek, the Alex Kurtzman, Akiva Goldsman Trek. We look back at that old batch of 5 shows, all the novels that were generated from that old batch of 5 shows, and that was a blast. I've read a lot of those novels. I loved that original world. I might have had my quibbles here and there with it, but I loved that original world. I was an original viewer of the original Star Trek and recognized it for what it was and loved it right away on network TV. That was easy. That first month was easy. I could literally do that all year long. And there's enough material. It's the second half of Book Trek 2022 that's difficult, because the second half of Book Trek 2022 is Strange New Worlds, which is not an explicit reference to the new TV show that just wrapped up its first season. It's the new Trek, which is either Star Trek properties, book properties that are set in that old Roddenberry universe but don't have anything to do with any of those Roddenberry shows. There are some of those. Or the books generated by Alex Kurtzman Trek, by New Trek, which is Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Lower Decks, Star Trek Prodigy, and Star Trek Strange New Worlds. There's very little of that fiction, a tiny fraction compared to the endless number of books for the older continuity. And you might think, well, the reason for that is because these shows have only been around for a few years. There was a mountain of Star Trek fiction after Star Trek had been around for a few years. And after Star Trek The Next Generation, good Lord, there were tons of... I don't think it's that. As I said in my earlier rant video, which I'm going to try not to repeat for this video, I think it's because Star Trek, New Trek doesn't have any fans. And certainly no readers. It has box checkers, and that's all. Twitter posturers, and that's all. Of course, that is a sweeping categorical statement. I'm sure that there are literally some New Trek fans. I would argue that if they are fans of the show, they're fans because they see a mirror image of themselves somewhere on the show. And that if that mirror image were removed, then they wouldn't be a fan anymore. They're not a fan of the thing itself. They're a fan of themselves. I would argue that, but I would argue that off camera, because I went on a long rant about Star Trek Discovery that I think strained your patience. So I am back for another Book Trek book. And as I made clear in that earlier rant video, I think that Star Trek Discovery is flawed in its bones. I don't think it's only a question of execution. I think it is a fundamentally flawed idea of how to do a Star Trek franchise. It's the story of one person. It's the melodrama of how great one person is. And that's not Star Trek. I know that some of you might think, well, wait a minute, wasn't Spock the standout star of the original show? Wasn't Data the standout star of Star Trek The Next Generation? Anyone who's watched those shows would admit right away, insist to their dying breath that they were ensemble. That was the point of it all. Those 1 or 2 genuine New Trek fans would probably say that Star Trek Discovery is an ensemble thing, but it's not. It's not at all. If, in an episode of Star Trek Discovery, an alien being more powerful than its character, Michael Burnham, I don't know how that could be since she's already God, but if you found an alien that was more powerful than her, that came onto the bridge of the Discovery and killed her, all of the rest of the Discovery's supporting cast would commit suicide in sympathy. So there wouldn't be anybody left. But I don't know. I'm assuming that Star Trek Discovery is coming back. That they, as I mentioned, they left for the 32nd century. They went through an anomaly. The show had an anomaly every week, and they went through an anomaly and ended up 1,000 years in the future. Which would be a great exit. You wouldn't have to account for where all of these people, who are all better at their jobs than anyone has ever been or ever will be, ended up in Kirk's time. Because keep in mind, Discovery is 10 years before the original series. All these people would still be in Starfleet. Michael Burnham would be the head of Starfleet, an admiral, a vice admiral, and also the president of the Federation. And maybe even the chancellor of the High Council of the Klingon Empire as well. I mean, why not? I mean, if she can't have all of those jobs separately at the same time, then you're probably a bigot. if you've made Michael Burnham so great that every starship, every colony, every building would be named after her in Kirk's time, then you can't have her around in Kirk's time. And I thought that was mainly a kind of a neat exit. Just the showrunners have to know how massively unpopular Star Trek Discovery is. Maybe that was their way to get rid of it, while leaving the possibility that they could always return. So I don't know if Star Trek Discovery is going to come back for another season. I earnestly hope not. And that is a weird feeling for a Star Trek fan. But I read Desperate Hours, which is Star Trek Discovery fiction by David Mack, but it is set prior to the events of Star Trek Discovery, for the most part. It's set on the starship Shenzhou when Michael Burnham was not yet a captain. And David Mack sometimes usually pleases me as a Star Trek fan. This book was awful. So I thought, well, are you being fair? I mean, I hate Star Trek Discovery. I hate everything about it. Everything about it. And not just any of its execution, but the basic philosophy behind it. I hate all of that. The basic philosophy behind it is so divisive. It's so hateful to 80% of the people who have any chance of wanting to watch it in the first place. It's so openly hateful of its audience that I hate it. And I thought, well, okay, maybe you were being unfair. I don't think I was. I think if you read Star Trek Desperate Hours, I think you would see that I wasn't being unfair. But I thought, why not go at another Star Trek Discovery novel? There aren't many of them. Why not go at another one? And just to tip the balance in my favor, just to make sure that I'm giving it as much of a shot as possible, why not see if you can find a Star Trek Discovery novel written by a writer you like, a writer you already know you like. And I found one. It's this, The Way to the Stars. This is a Star Trek Discovery novel by Una McCormack, who's written a few Star Trek books that I have really enjoyed. I did not enjoy this one. It's about Ensign Tilly. Any of you who have watched Star Trek Discovery will know who this character is. She is, if Michael Burnham is the self-insert Mary Sue of the writer's room, of the Twitter activist, political, non-Star Trek fan writer's room of Star Trek Discovery, the people who have no idea about continuity and don't care, who think you're a racist or a sexist if you even bring it up, the people who have no idea about science or science fiction or anything like that, who are just writing, let's fix all of Twitter's problems through Star Trek because it's our playground. We don't have to honor any of the creativity that went before us. We can do whatever we want with it. If Michael Burnham was those writers' self-insert character, then Ensign Tilly is the self-insert character of those one or two genuine Star Trek Discovery fans. She is what you get if you raise someone entirely on John and Hank Green's YouTube videos. That's what you get. You will get Ensign Tilly, who in every appearance on Star Trek Discovery, every time she bumbles onto screen or chortles with laughter when she's given a direct order by a superior officer, every time she does anything like that, I was always literally expecting her to just sort of mutter to herself or to say out loud, "Don't forget to be awesome." I kept expecting that. She is the living embodiment of the Green Brothers on Star Trek. She is Nerdfighteria, brought to the 23rd century. And this book is her story. It's barely a Star Trek story at all, even to the limited extent that anything Discovery is a Star Trek story. This isn't even that. This is a YA novel about her and her, totally overbearing mother. And how they, never see eye to eye, and they're, always locking horns, and, I don't want to be you. Even though you give me everything, I don't want to listen to you, even though you indulge my every whim. I want to strike a rebellious tone, even though you've catered to my every desire. How to put this without going on another rant? The idea behind Twitter politics, which is hardly the way to avoid going on another rant, is it? But I'll control myself, I promise. The idea behind Twitter politics, behind so-called SJW woke politics, the corrosive part of it, not legitimate desire for social improvement, but the corrosive parts of it. The idea behind those things is that the people with the blue check marks vouchsafing their woke opinions have reached moral perfection. They have reached the pinnacle of moral development for the human race. That's why Michael Burnham, when she is transported to the 32nd century, is able to take her vaguely wounded, condescending tone. Same one that she has on the Discovery. Why don't you see how great I am? Why? Even though in the continuity of the show, she would be little more than a cave woman to these people. Even so, her attitude is that way because the idea of the showrunners is, since she's already morally perfect, perfect doesn't change from era to era. So she reached moral perfection in the 23rd century. It doesn't matter where you catapult her into the future. She'll still be perfect. And she'll still be surrounded by people who aren't. Every one of the people in the writer's room for Star Trek Discovery believes they are themselves such a pinnacle. If that is the idea, I believe that is true. And that is certainly the idea behind woke politics on Twitter, is that, I'm kind of weirded out that you would even ask me a question. Isn't my complete superiority on all subjects self-evident? The idea behind that, one of the noxious buy-ins to that, is that if you consider yourself to be the peak of moral perfection, then everyone who isn't you, or a so-called ally of yours, is contemptible. They're drastically imperfect and probably embrace their perfections. They're probably part of the problem. They probably need to do better. And that's the attitude in this book. It suffuses this book. It's also the attitude in 9/10 of all current written YA, it's what makes it so odious. Is that you're reading it and this is all just preening. Most of Star Trek Discovery is just preening. Every character preening. I thought we were in for more of that with Star Trek Strange New Worlds. There's quite a bit of preening on Star Trek Strange New Worlds in that first season. But we'll get to Star Trek Strange New Worlds, because I am not going to rant about Discovery for the whole month of September. I went to this book because of Una McCormack, and didn't like it. It was boring. I won't say that any of the characters weren't in character, because there aren't any characters in here. The Star Trek Desperate Hours had Pike and Spock. So plenty of grounds. The established continuity of Star Trek, the original series, the Next Generation, the animated series, that's all completely violated by Star Trek Discovery, intentionally. So having those characters in the same book is never going to work. And that's not a problem here. If I had a greater taste for modern, Green Brothers-inspired, preening, I was right all along, my parents are kind of dumb and probably racist, YA fiction of the type that suffuses the market today, I would probably have liked this a lot more. I don't understand. A part of me wants to interview Una McCormack about this, not only because I'm not sure that's her real name. I view it as an untenable coincidence that this name, which is had by only 2 people anywhere in the universe, is had by a Star Trek writer and is revealed to be the first name of number 1 on Pike's Enterprise. I don't believe that's a coincidence. But I would love to interview her about this book. I have no idea. Maybe she's one of these glaze-eyed Moonies from Twitter who really does think that they are the pinnacle of moral perfection with no improvement necessary. The only time they ever fall short is when they occasionally get tired. Just tired. Their Twitter handle, so-and-so is so tired. And they're not tired because they're exercising. They don't exercise. They spend all day on Twitter. No, they're tired because you're so imperfect. And they're constantly having to improve you. Don't ask me to instruct you anymore. Oh, maybe she's one of those. I have no idea. Certainly I don't think so, because her other Star Trek fiction that I've read has been very good. I don't know what accounts for this, except maybe that this is all she has to work with. To put it mildly, Ensign Tilly cannot float a novel. She is not interesting. And nothing around her is interesting. And so this book wasn't interesting. And that is the most punishment that I'm going to put myself through for Star Trek Discovery. I will read another Star Trek Discovery novel, but not right away. I am going to go on to something else. In fact, I think I sort of spin the wheel for my ebooks when I'm doing book trek picking for the night. But I think tonight will be intentional. I think tonight I will read a Star Trek Picard book. I have a lot of thoughts about Star Trek Picard. Not all of them good. A lot of them not good. So probably a Star Trek Picard rant in your future? I don't know. I'm trying not to make book trek in September, just one rant video after another. But there's very little about so-called new Trek, Alex Kurtzman Trek, that I like. Until you get to Strange New Worlds. I thought the first episode of Prodigy was really good. Really good. Not really Star Trek, but really good. Really well done. And probably other episodes of that are out there that I could catch up on. I don't think I've watched anything but that one. And Lower Decks, I don't think is going to inspire any books. Maybe comic books, but not books. So it's possible that I could read every new Trek book that's ever been written in the month of September, even while reading everything else. If true, maybe I will try that. Oh, God. Anyway, that's your book for today. I cannot recommend The Path to the Way to the Stars. It's boring YA. Just masquerading as Star Trek, just using the dead corpse of the Star Trek name. But nothing about it is Star Trek or even really good science fiction or even really good YA. So, it's a little bit of a downer. I'm going to try not to read only duds for Book Trek. So we will see what happens next time. Thank you, BookTube.